The irradiated wasteland has no shortage of mutants and abominations, many of which started life as recognizable pre-war creatures, including Yao Guai, previously known as the American black bear. Although, thanks to the cruel touch of radiation released during the Great War, their DNA was tainted, and they were transformed into one of the most fearsome creatures to ever roam the New World. Now we know Yao Guai are mutated black bears, but what about their new name? Well, during the years leading up to the Great War, specifically the period known as the Sino-American War, many innocent Chinese Americans, guilty spies and secret agents were rounded up and sent to concentration camps, where they were supposed to live out the remainder of their lives under the watchful eye of the US military. However, the nuclear holocaust granted many prisoners a second chance at life. Soldiers abandoned their posts, systems shut down, and in rare cases, gates opened, allowing some of them to escape and start new lives in the post-war world. And it was during this time, while surviving in the wilderness away from raiders and rogue machines, where they witnessed firsthand the adverse effects radiation had on local wildlife, including the mutated black bears now emerging from hibernation. Abominations they dubbed Yao Guai, a compound word consisting of two Chinese characters, Yao meaning monster or demon, and Guai meaning strange or unusual. The Chinese descendants continued using this name, and as survivors mingled creating new settlements, so too did their language, and the name Yao Guai has been used ever since. While Yao Guai can be found in various regions across the wasteland, they are most commonly encountered in areas with dense vegetation and fresh water. More often than not, they can be seen sheltering in caves or dens. Mostly they live alone, but sometimes they can live in large packs, which is unusual for bears. While bears don't typically live in extended family groups or join in hunts, they can coexist in close proximity to each other, and in fact, form alliances and even friendships. But in the post-war world, it's quite common to see bears not only hunting together, but also living together too. The most notable location where Yao Guai can be seen living together is the Yao Guai cave in Washington, D.C., where 7 adult bears happily coexist. But this number could be higher, because we don't really understand how they hunt. They could leave the cave together hunting in one large pack, several smaller groups, or alone. And I say this because many Yao Guai can be seen hunting on their own, but we don't know if they separate when hunting, or if these lonesome Yao Guai are indeed living solitary lives. I guess it all depends on how scarce food is, and how dangerous the area is as well. The capital wasteland is quite barren, explaining why so many bears have come together, while areas of California are lush, so there's less reason for them to work together. Regardless of their new familial bonds, they all more or less look the same: hunched posture, glossy dead eyes, mangy fur, and numerous scars, either from radiation burns or old injuries caused by other creatures. But it's still very much a bear. It walks around on 4 legs, sometimes standing on 2 legs to make itself appear larger and more imposing, all the while using sharp claws to attack, easily tearing through flesh, and more impressively, power armor, before ultimately going in for the kill by biting the neck or back. In some Fallout games, there are different variants of Yao Guai with unique characteristics. For example, they may be larger, stronger, or have special abilities such as increased resistance to certain types of damage. Glowing Yao Guai, for example, have been exposed to high levels of radiation, causing their bodies to emit a faint green glow. They are typically more resilient and aggressive than standard Yao Guai, posing an even greater threat to unwary travelers. There's also stunted Yao Guai, who are much smaller due to being malnourished, and rabid Yao Guai, post-war bears affected with rabies, a viral disease they can pass on to humans with a single bite. And there's many, many other variants out there, but there's only one that's worth mentioning. Like many other creatures, humans included, bears can also turn into ghouls, but the chances of that happening seems to be rarer for bears, although it does still happen. Those that have undergone the ghoulification process have really poor eyesight, due to radiation damage, age, and past injuries, resulting in the bears being almost blind. And there is a unique ghoul bear I'd like to mention, Rusa, the pre-war wonder bear. Rusa was the former star attraction of Point Lookout, Maryland, known predominantly for her special trick of balancing atop a big red ball. Though, after the Great War, Rusa retired from her circus days and found a new home in the irradiated marshes of Point Lookout. But that same radiation turned her into a ghoul, and for the next 200 years, she's done nothing more than relax in her den, feed on swamp folk, and while she no longer uses it, she does still have her signature red ball. Due to Rusa being a ghoul, she cannot procreate, but we know, thanks to the Yao Guai cubs in Zion Canyon, that they do indeed breed, providing the Wasteland with a steady supply of bears. Which is a good thing, because people need food to survive, and Yao Guai provide a lot of meat. And for that reason, survivors actively hunt them in the hopes of turning the dangerous creature into a delicious meal. And their uses don't end there, because humans, and on rare occasions super mutants, not only consume Yao Guai flesh, but also make trinkets and trophies, turning their hides into clothing and their teeth into charms. But some people have even gone a step further, using certain parts of their bodies to make deadly weapons. The Sorrows, for example, a tribe residing in Zion Canyon, are renowned for their effectiveness in hunting Yao Guai using Yao Guai gauntlets, a glove of sorts, fashioned from the severed paw of a defeated bear. Using their sharp claws against them is a good tactic, but creating a weapon that can only be used up close and personal doesn't really sound like a good idea. Nevertheless, they have mastered the art of fighting bears, and despite having to deal with them on a regular basis, the Sorrows don't see them as pests, rather a necessary part of the canyon's circle of life. Due to their close proximity with the creatures and the tribe's spiritual tendency, there's a certain Yao Guai that's reached mythical status. You see, as children, the Sorrows don't have names. That is something they receive after completing the rite of passage, the act of hunting and killing a Yao Guai and fashioning a gauntlet from its paw. Only then do they receive a name. And long ago, there was a girl who thought she was ready to complete the rite of passage and receive a name, but to her surprise, she wasn't. The unnamed girl found a Yao Guai den and she entered, but she didn't exit. Since then, the Sorrows believed that the unnamed child and the Yao Guai joined together to form a mythical creature locally known as the Ghost of Shei, a giant Yao Guai unlike any other. For Ghost of Shei is on fire and has the ability to spawn smaller versions of itself, which doesn't sound real, and for good reason. According to one of the developers, while the Yao Guai is real, its strange abilities, like being constantly on fire, is actually the result of the Sorrows being under the influence of a Datura-derived drug during the rite of passage. Datura is known for its poisonous but also psychoactive properties, so while Ghost of Shei does exist and is gigantic, she isn't mythical. Not all relationships with bears are as spiritual as the Sorrows and the Ghost of Shei. While it is extremely rare and immensely difficult, some Wastelanders have actually domesticated, or more accurately, trained, Yao Guai to interact with certain humans. These efforts are often fraught with danger and require a deep understanding of the creature's behaviour. However, a few exceptional individuals have succeeded in forming bonds with Yao Guai. How scavengers have managed to do this, I'm not sure. Black bears are normally shy, retiring animals that have very little desire to interact with humans, unless they are forced to be around them to be near food, which I suspect is the case for those we see alongside scavengers, who may be feeding the bears in return for protection. Alternatively, we know Yao Guai cubs are smaller and less aggressive than adults, so perhaps the scavengers take the cubs from their mother and then raise them alongside humans. Or those same scavengers have the power to control animals using psychic abilities. Think of the Animal Friend perk. This is technically a psychic ability that we as players can have, and psychic powers do exist in Fallout and are much more prominent than you may think. Regardless of the reason, Yao Guai aren't exactly the strange and demonic monsters they've been made out to be. They can have familial bonds, their own homes, land on which they hunt, and they are smart enough to be tamed, although I do use that word lightly. They are very much wild animals making the best of a bad situation, and that's something all survivors can understand. I'm not saying Yao Guai aren't dangerous, because they most certainly are, but they're not exactly monsters either. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you'd like to see in a later video, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. With that said, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.